a promise in the snow. The voice was a ghost, a thread of sound nearly lost the city's hum. Hoarse, trembling, and small. "Sir, I was just trying to find my mom." Julian Croft, CEO and a man long accustomed to the resolute forward march of his own life, stopped. The soles of his expensive leather shoes made a soft, crisp sound against the ice-slick pavement of the alley. Behind him, the glass and steel monolith of his tech empire, Croft Industries, clawed at the night sky, its windows like 1,000 unblinking eyes. Beyond the alley, the lights of Manhattan glittered, softened by the first whispers of a fresh snowfall. He turned in his heart, a muscle he'd trained into disciplined quiet seized. There, wedged between the frozen metal of two dumpsters, was a child, a girl who couldn't have been more than 5. She was swallowed by an adult's coat, its sleeves falling far past her fingertips, a pathetic shield against the gnawing cold. Her face, smudged with dirt, was blotched a painful red, and her dark, curly hair was matted to her cheeks with melting snow. She lay on a bed of flattened cardboard, a battered backpack serving as her pillow. One of her small shoes was gone. The other clung precariously to a sock-clad foot. For a long, stark moment, Julian was frozen. The wind bit at the exposed skin of his neck. But a strange, alarming heat flooded his veins, a cocktail of confusion, shock, and a sudden primal fear. The girl's lips trembled again. "I wanted to go to the hospital where Mommy works, but I don't know where it is." A dry, shallow cough racked her tiny frame, and she shuddered with the effort. In an instant, Julian was on his knees. Hey there, little one. It's okay. I've got you." His hands, usually so steady signing contracts or commanding a boardroom, hovered uncertainly. She looked up at him, her eyes wide and unervingly dull for one so young, rimmed with red and filled with an expression he hadn't seen in years. Quiet desperation. It wasn't panic or even overt fear. It was a profound exhaustion of soul that had fought too hard for too long. He unwound the cashmere scarf from his neck and gently, carefully, wrapped it around hers. Her small hands, nails tinged with terrifying blue, clutched the soft fabric. "Don't you worry," Julian murmured, his voice softer than he'd heard it in ages. "We're gonna get you warm. You're safe now." With one hand, he pulled his phone from his coat and dialed 911. The voice that commanded billion-dollar deals trembled slightly as he gave a location. "I found a little girl alone behind the Croft Industries building. She's freezing. Looks sick, maybe hypothermia. Send an ambulance. Now." He ended the call and, without a second thought, scooped her into his arms. She was lighter than air, a fragile bundle of bones and cold. She didn't resist. Her head simply fell against his chest with a sigh of utter surrender. "My name is Julian," he said softly. "What's yours?" Her lips parted, but no sound emerged. He could feel the deep, penetrating chill of her body, even through his thick wool coat. She was like ice. Instinctively, he tightened his hold, trying to will his own warmth into her. The snow was falling harder now. Fat, wet flakes that absorbed the alley's flickering security light, wrapping them in a surreal silence. She whispered something then, so faint he almost missed it. "Mommy said not to talk to strangers, but if I get lost, go where there's light." A lump formed in Julian's throat. She had followed the lights of his building. He looked down at her. Her eyes had drifted closed, her small body sagging in his arms, not lifeless, but utterly spent. The wail of a siren finally sliced through the night. 2 paramedics rushed toward them. Julian didn't hand her over right away, holding her as one of them checked her vitals. "She's freezing. Pulses thready," the paramedic muttered, already unfurling a thermal blanket. As they worked, Julian stood by, his arms feeling strangely empty, the ghost of her warmth lingering on his coat. Her faint scent of cold air, dirt, and something like faint, sweet shampoo clung to his scarf. "Any idea who she is?" one of them asked. Julian shook his head. "She said she was looking for her mother. At a hospital. That's all I know." They lifted the girl onto the gurney and into the ambulance. Julian watched her fragile form disappear inside. Can I ride with her?" he asked, the word surprising even himself. The paramedics exchanged a look. taking in his tailored suit, his expensive coat, the glint of his cufflinks. But one of them nodded. "Yeah, you found her. Get in." As Julian climbed inside, he glanced back one last time at the cardboard she called a bed. A cracked, pink lunchbox lay on its side, tragically empty. He picked it up and followed her in. The doors shut, the siren screamed, and as the ambulance tore through the frozen night, Julian Croft, a man who had long ago dismissed the notion of Christmas miracles, held a tiny, cold hand and whispered, "You're not alone, little one. Not tonight." St. Teresa's hope. The hospital room was a world of muted sounds. The softened machines, the steady, rhythmic beat of a heart monitor. The lights were dimmed, casting long shadows. Outside, snow tapped a gentle, muffled rhythm against a window. Julian stood sentinel by the bed, his gaze fixed on the small form lost beneath a sea of white blankets. The girl stirred, a soft whimper escaping her lips. He moved closer as her eyes fluttered open. She stared at the ceiling for a moment, disoriented, before her gaze found Julian's face. "Is this the hospital?" she asked, her voice a dry, cracked whisper. "Yes," Julian said gently. "You're safe now." Her tiny hands clutched the blanket. Is this where my mommy works?" He paused. "Do you remember the name of the hospital?" She frowned in concentration, then pressed a small finger to her chest, mimicking someone pointing to an ID badge. "She wears a blue coat. It has letters. St. Teresa something." Julian exhaled, a quiet rush of relief. "Yes, this is St. Teresa's." The tension seemed to melt from her small shoulders. "She told me, if anything ever happens and she doesn't come home, I should come to the hospital." He pulled a chair to her bedside. "What happened last night?" "I waited," she said, her voice distant. "She always comes home before the sky gets all dark." But the clock kept going past dinner, past cartoons. She didn't come. A knot twisted in Julian's stomach. "So, you want to find her?" She nodded slowly. "I put on my coat and my boots. I followed the twinkly lights on the stores, but then the snow got hard. I couldn't see anymore." His eyes stung. "Do you know how far you walked?" She looked down at her hands. "A lot of blocks. My feet got hurty. I saw steam coming from behind a big building, so I sat there. There was a box, and I curled up. I thought if I closed my eyes, morning would come faster." He swallowed hard. "Why didn't you ask anyone for help?" Her lower lip trembled. "Mommy said not to talk to strangers. But I was so cold. I was so scared." His throat tightened. She was just 5 years old, adrift in a city that could devour grown men. "You did the right thing," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were so incredibly brave." She looked at him, her brown eyes wide and exhausted. "Are you a doctor?" He managed a faint smile. "No, just someone who found you." A comfortable silence settled between them. "My name is Rose," she whispered after a moment. "I'm Julian." Another pause. Then, with a heartbreaking sincerity, she said, "Thank you for stopping." Something profound shifted inside him. He saw his own daughter, Sophie, in those wide, innocent eyes. The familiar ache of loss, a beast he kept caged, roared back to life, raw and fierce. Not again, he thought. Not this child. He leaned forward, his voice a steady vow. "I am going to find her, Rose. I'm going to find your mom. I promise." At the nurse's station, Julian's hands trembled slightly as he scanned the intake records. His eyes flew across the pages, names, dates, diagnoses. And then he saw it. Unidentified female patient, admitted last night, found unconscious in staff stairwell. Suspected stroke. No ID. Labeled Jane Doe. The time matched. Just after 8 p.m., right when Rose had started her lonely vigil. He looked up at the nurse. "This Jane Doe, what does she look like?" The nurse frowned. Mid-30s, blonde, slender build. She's in the ICU. Still unresponsive. Julian's heart hammered against his ribs. "I need to see her," he said, his voice urgent. "I think she might be the mother of the little girl I brought in." Minutes later, Julian stood outside the ICU, holding Rose's small hand. "Where are we going?" she asked, her eyes wide with confusion. "I think your mom might be in here," he said gently. "We're gonna go check." He led her into the dim room. A still figure lay in the bed, a constellation of wires and tubes connecting her to the beeping machines that stood guard. Rose froze. Her eyes darted to the woman's pale hand, then to the coat draped over a chair nearby. She gasped, "That's her coat. That's Mommy's." She rushed to the bedside, her tiny fingers curling around the cold metal rail. Her voice was a fragile, hopeful quaver. "Mommy?" The woman's face was pale, her lips tinged with blue, her blonde hair fanned out across the pillow. Rose reached out and timidly touched her mother's hand. "It's me, Mommy. I found you. I came to the hospital, just like you said." There was no response. But then, almost imperceptibly, the woman's fingers twitched. Rose gasped, tears instantly springing to her eyes. "She moved. She knows I'm here." Julian felt a powerful wave of emotion crash over him. He stepped behind Rose, placing a steadying hand on her back. "You did it," he whispered. "You found her." "She told me she'd never leave me," Rose whispered back. "She said she always comes back." Julian looked at the woman in the bed, a stranger who had worked until she collapsed, with no one to call, no one to even know her name. But her daughter knew, and her daughter had crossed the frozen city, guided by nothing but faith and a promise. He had never witnessed a love so fierce, so palpable, even in the face of such stillness. Rose leaned her forehead against her mother's arm. "I waited," she said softly. "Then I came to find you. I didn't even cry that much, just like you told me." Julian could barely breathe. In the sterile, cold room, something sacred was unfolding. He stepped back, giving them their space, his eyes fixed on the child who had conquered a storm and the woman who, even in silence, had kept her promise. A father's fear, a son's heart. The small, quiet room next to the nurse's lounge was a temporary sanctuary. They had brought Rose a blanket and warm milk. She curled up on the narrow cot, hugging her backpack as if it were a beloved teddy bear. Julian sat in the chair beside her, watching as her eyelids grew heavy. "Did I do good, Mr. Julian?" she mumbled, her voice thick with sleep. He leaned closer. "You were amazing, Rose." "I found her just like she said." A soft sigh escaped her lips, and she drifted into sleep. He gently pulled the blanket higher over her shoulders. One small hand still clutched the strap of her backpack. He stared at her, a profound and unsettling feeling twisting inside him. He should be home with his son, Leo, reading Christmas stories. But he couldn't leave. The moment he had lifted her from the cold ground, he remembered the terrifying lightness of her, the chilling cold of her skin, and the way she had trusted him instantly. And for the first time in years, he had felt true fear, not the calculated risk of the boardroom, but the visceral terror that he would be too late. He had felt that once before, holding his wife Alara as her breath slipped away in a hospital bed just like this one. It had broken something in him that had never truly healed. But here was Rose, alive, and her mother, 2 doors down, was still fighting. Why did he care so much? He didn't have an answer. All he knew was that tonight, with the snow falling like a benediction outside, he felt something shift within him, something frighteningly close to hope. The next afternoon, Leo stood just outside the hospital room, his fingers clenched around a folded piece of paper. His dad sat on the floor beside the cot where Rose was sleeping. He was reading from a book, The Snowy Day. Leo knew every word by heart. That used to be his story. His dad used to read it to him when his mom was still here, when the world still made sense. Now he was reading it to her. A hot, quiet jealousy stirred in Leo's chest. He turned to leave, but just then his father looked up. "Leo," Julian said softly. "Hey, come on in." Leo hesitated. "I brought something," he muttered, holding out the paper. It was a crayon drawing of 2 kids building a snowman, while a taller figure smiled beside them. "For her. I'm sure she'll love it," Julian said, kneeling to be at eye level with his son. "Do you want to give it to her when she wakes up?" Leo shook his head. "You can." A beat of silence passed. "You used to read that book to me." "Yeah, I did," Julian said, his voice gentle. "You haven't in a while." I guess I thought you were getting too old for bedtime stories. I'm not, Leo said quickly, then quieter. Not really. Julian placed a hand on his shoulder. I can read to you tonight. Just say the word. Leo nodded, his eyes fixed on his shoes. There was something else, something that felt like a block of ice in his throat. Finally, he whispered, "Do you still think about Mom?" Julian's expression softened. "Every single day." "Then why do you look happy again?" The question hung in the air, heavy and sharp. Leo's voice cracked. "Are you going to love them more than us?" "Them?" "Her and her mom," Leo clarified. "You've been here a lot. You're different. It's like, you're not just ours anymore." Julian pulled his son into a hug. "Oh, Leo, I am so sorry if I made you feel that way. When Mom died, I thought my heart was broken for good. I thought it would just be us forever. It has been just us," Liam said quietly. "And you have been my whole world, Leo. Everything. But now, there's a little girl who needs help. And a mother who is no one. They're scared and they're hurting. And maybe I've started to care." "So things are changing," Leo whispered. "Maybe," Julian conceded. "But change doesn't mean replacing. I will never stop missing your mom. And I will never stop loving you. That will never, ever change." Tears welled in Leo's eyes. "I just didn't want to lose someone again." "You won't," Julian promised, his voice firm. "You're still my number one guy. But maybe we have room in our hearts to help someone else too?" Leo hesitated, then gave a small nod. He stepped forward and gently placed his drawing beside Rose's pillow. He turned back to his father, and without a word, his small hand slid into Julian's. They walked out of the room together, a team ready to face whatever came next, the softest blue gloves. Hours later, Julian found himself back in the ICU, sitting by the bed of the woman he now knew was named Clara Evans. He dropped Leo at home with the sitter, promising he wouldn't be long, but he couldn't pull himself away. On the side table sat Clara's coat. Acting on an impulse he didn't understand, he reached over and checked the pockets, hoping for a clue, an emergency contact, anything. Tucked deep in the lining, his fingers found a small, yellowed envelope. He opened it. Inside was a handwritten thank you card. The ink was slightly smudged, but the words were clear. "Thank you for holding my hand when I thought I was going to lose my daughter. I will never forget your kindness. The way you kept whispering, 'She's strong. So are you. I don't even know your name, but you were wearing the softest blue gloves, and your voice made the room stop spinning. Bless you, whoever you are.' It was signed with all my heart, Julian Croft." Julian's breath hitched. His Alara. He sank back into the chair, the card trembling in his hand. The night Sophie was born, there had been complications. Alara had told him afterward about a young nurse. Blonde hair, a calm voice. She held my hand while the doctors worked. She had whispered. She didn't let go until Sophie cried. He stared at Clara's sleeping face. It was her. All these years later, it was her. And here she was, broken and alone, with her own child waiting in fear. He moved to the window, the card clutched in his hand. His thoughts raced, a whirlwind of coincidence and fate, but his heart settled. It understood before his mind could. She was there, he whispered to the glass. She was there for Alara, for Sophie. He returned to the bedside and sat closer, his gaze softening. "You were the one," he said softly to the unconscious woman. "You helped my wife when I couldn't. You helped bring my daughter into this world." His voice broke. "And now, your daughter has shown up in mine," as if time had folded on itself. He felt a profound sense of connection, a reminder that no act of kindness is ever truly lost. He reached for Clara's hand, his touch gentle. "Thank you," he whispered, his eyes wet with tears, "for what you did back then, for being there when my world was shaking." He paused, his grip tightening slightly. I think I was meant to find you." And for the first time in a very long time, Julian Croft didn't feel haunted by his past. He felt found by it. New traditions. The first thing Clara saw when she opened her eyes was a blurry white ceiling. Her body ached. but her heart began to pound for only one reason. "Rose," she whispered, her voice a raw croak. "Rose, where's my daughter?" A nurse rushed in, but before she could speak, a deep, calm voice came from the doorway. "She's right here." Julian stepped into the room, his hand resting on Rose's back as she peeked in shyly. "Mommy," she cried, running forward and scrambling onto the bed. Clara wrapped her in a fierce embrace, burying her face in her daughter's hair as silent tears streamed down her cheeks. "I found you, Mommy," Rose whispered. "Just like you said." Over the next few days, as Clara recovered, Julian became a constant, gentle presence. He brought books for Rose and coffee for Clara. They talked, their conversations slowly deepening from polite exchanges to the sharing of their lives, their losses, and their quiet strengths. Clara told him about being a pediatric nurse, about losing her job after a series of debilitating migraines left her unable to keep up, about taking any work she could find to keep a roof over their heads. "I was mopping floors in the same hospital where I used to walk with a stethoscope," she said, her voice devoid of bitterness, only a quiet resilience. Julian, in turn, told her about Alara and Sophie, about the hollowness of his life after they were gone, and how finding a little girl in the snow had cracked open his frozen heart. "You've been strong for so long," he said to her one afternoon, "but you don't have to do it all alone anymore." Meanwhile, Rose and Leo had become inseparable, the snowstorm siblings, as the nurse had called them. One evening, Liam brought a tiny, undecorated Christmas tree into Clara's room. "I thought maybe we could build something new," he said. "New traditions." Clara smiled, her eyes shining. "I've never had a Christmas without worry before." He placed a tree on the windowsill. "Maybe this year," he said softly, "we don't wish for anything. Maybe we just notice what's already here." And sitting in that hospital bed, watching her daughter laugh beside Leo, watching Julian quietly fix a bent ornament, Clara realized she wasn't just healing. She was hoping, the family we find. 1 year later, snow fell softly on a quiet street just a block from Central Park. Inside a small townhouse filled with a scent of cinnamon and pine, a modest Christmas tree glowed, its ornaments a mismatched but beloved collection. Julian stood in the kitchen, pouring hot chocolate, a genuine smile gracing his features. So much had changed. He had changed. In the living room, Leo handed Rose a wrapped gift. She tore it open to reveal a small, hardcover book. On the cover was a crayon drawing of a snowman and 2 children. "Did you draw this?" Rose gasped. Leo shrugged, tried to look casual. "It's your story. I wrote it down for you." She opened the cover and read the dedication. "To my little sister, from your big brother, Leo." She threw her arms around him in a tight hug. Hannah stepped into the room, wearing a simple red dress. She watched the children, a look of quiet awe on her face. Julian walked over, handing her a mug. "Hot cocoa, extra marshmallows," he said softly. "You remembered." "I remember everything." They stood side by side, a comfortable, warm silence between them. Then Rose turned to Julian, her voice soft and sincere. "Daddy Julian?" The name still made his heart skip a beat. "Thank you," she said, "for finding me." He knelt down to her level. "Thank you for letting me." As Rose turned back to Leo, Clara reached for Julian's hand, her fingers lacing through his. "I used to think my life was just about surviving," she said softly. "That love like this wasn't for people like me." Julian's eyes met hers, shining with love that felt both new and ancient. "You were never meant to do it all alone." He reached up, brushing a tear from her cheek. "You are worth loving, Clara," he whispered. "You always were." In that moment, surrounded by quiet music and falling snow, their family wasn't one of documents or blood. It was one defined by moments, by a promise kept across a snowstorm, a child found in the dark, a hand held in a quiet hospital room, and the simple, unwavering truth that they were finally home. Some families are born, but some, the most miraculous ones, are found.